keep it under, maybe say who you are and then why you're running for the Board of Regents. So.
Good afternoon. I think if I keep the microphone that far away, it actually works better, right? Yeah. The communication's kind of known. Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out on Saturday. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. My name is Joe Atkins. I am deeply honored to even be here with you. When I was about the age of several young folks in the back, I ran for mayor of Invergrove Heights, 26 years old, and the very first endorsement that I received was from the Teamsters. They were the only ones willing to take a chance on me, and I've never forgotten that. And they continue to endorse me every single time I run for election. As a mayor for 5 terms, as a state representative for 7 terms, 14 years, and now in the Dakota County Board of Commissioners for the last 3 years. And so I just wanted to start by saying thank you for that. I see that as the union member myself, the son of a union member, the grandson of a union member, and a great-grandson of a union member. It means an awful lot. I'm also honored to be sitting here with Robyn, Gulley, and Mary Turner. You will not find anybody who would be better on the Board of Regents than Robyn. I have a message, though, that some folks, particularly at the Board of Regents and elsewhere, quite honestly, when I made it through the Regent Candidate Advisory Council, I was a little surprised because I have kind of a tough love message for you. It was a game changer for me. I graduated, worked full time for myself through the U back in the 80s. Probably the last generation to be able to pull that off, where you could work full time and actually pay your way through. And for me, as the first generation on my mom's side to ever make it through college, it's a big deal. Contribute much of my success in life to being able to get through the U successfully. Went out of law school, graduated, then partnered.
Put it up a few decibels.
I could just pull it a little closer for the folks at home. So I've spent most of my life in service, public service, mayor, legislator, county commissioner, but also had a law practice in South St. Paul, representing folks. I try to give power to the powerless, voice to the voiceless, representing folks that need a voice, oftentimes against insurance companies and big corporations. That's what I do for a living. And I've appreciated the opportunity to do that. When I got into the legislature, I chief authored much of the university's legislation from HEPR, and we saw what happened at Northrop recently. The asset preservation stuff, I chief authored that. Chief authored the student grant program, carried other legislation on behalf of the U. I love the place. I've got a rug with a gopher on it, for goodness sakes, in my office. That being said, as much as I love the university and have great affinity for it, have 3 kids who've gone through there. We have 7 degrees. I think it's 7 degrees through the University of Minnesota. It seems to me it's been one preventable headache after another, and it started, quite frankly, with you guys. Not that you're the headache, but what I saw, the fact that it had nearly come to a strike, that and some comments by one of the regents, I figured it was either time to put up or shut up. So I put up, and I put my candidacy in. The antidote for that, in my opinion, is greater engagement. Get out of the boardroom, get down to the lunchroom, get out to the classrooms, sit down with folks and listen. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you just simply sit down and listen to folks, people on the front lines who know what's really going on. With that, I'm guessing at Jackson, I'm about 5 minutes, and I'm going to have a chance to talk some more. So I want to turn it over to my friend Robyn and Mary.
I'm going to set a timer because I'm positive that I will go over if I have the chance. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Is that your way of saying I went over?
Oh no, actually, this is great. I'm really saying I will go over. I'm so thrilled to be here with everyone and completely honored to have this opportunity. I want to first tell you about my experience at the university and how it's brought me here. And forgive me, I have some notes on my computer, and I also like to take quick notes when questions are coming up so that I can pay attention and make sure that I'm answering them completely. So my first experience at the University of Minnesota was as a graduate student in 2006. I went to the Humphrey School, where I did a master's in public policy with concentrations in global policy and human rights. While I was at the Humphrey School, I was elected to the Public Affairs Student Association. It's actually the first time I was ever elected to any office, and I see it as sort of a first step in the ways that the University of Minnesota has shaped my career and my life since then. After I graduated from the Humphrey School, I took a break. I did another graduate degree, and then I came back to Minnesota and I joined the leadership minor as an adjunct. I taught there for about 6.5 years as one of our full-time adjuncts. So I would teach as many classes as I could. 1 year I taught 7 classes and I made $24,000 that year. I see this as an enormous problem, and I want you to know that when I think about the reason that I'm sitting here in front of you, a lot of it is because I worked at the university for a long time, and I know that every single person who works there does it because they love the work and the mission of the organization. And we can't build a world-class university on the backs of low-wage workers, and that includes anyone who's doing maintenance or service or cleaning equipment or cleaning dorm rooms or making food. And it includes our adjuncts and our contract workers and the folks who are there because it's an absolute labor of love, and you need to treat them with dignity, and they deserve fair wages and fair benefits, and to feel like they matter in the institution, because the university is the people who work there and the people who go there. After I left so I also served in a number of other roles. So let me just say I had a number of contract positions where I did research at the university. I was a human rights fellow. I was a graduate assistant. I worked in the Human Rights Center and I worked in the Human Rights Program. I've had a lot of different little jobs in like social sciences and global studies, and much of my existence on the West Bank, but also quite a bit on the East Bank because that's where the leadership minor is. I left in 2018 to start Newbrook Labor College, where we educate union folks into the working class. And
Can you speak up a little
oh
bit?
yeah, sorry.
Or move it, yeah, thank you.
And part of the reason that I left to go and start Newbrook Labor College was that I saw that the university and that our public education system, our public land grant institutions, which belong to us and are there to educate us, were not serving everyone. And I saw that there were a lot of people who needed access to further education and leadership development in our labor movement who didn't see themselves at the University of Minnesota or at our other public institutions. And I see that as a tremendous problem. I've heard regents say things like, the students should want to invest in themselves. Well, by the way, it was 1977, I think, the last time that you could afford the tuition at the University of Minnesota on a minimum wage summer job. Since then, it's gone up to, I think right now, it would take about 2,000 hours of work on a minimum wage job to pay tuition for 1 year. And that doesn't include books, fees, housing, anything else. We are not serving everyone. And I've heard folks say students should be ready to invest in themselves. But I think that the people who come out of the University of Minnesota are the people who are going to serve us and our state and are going to help us take on the massive challenges that we have in front of us. And we have huge challenges in front of us, right? We're talking about climate change. We're talking about public safety. We're talking about global pandemics and huge public health issues like gun safety, and we don't know, and of course, like inequality and labor issues, and we don't know how to fix these problems. And we need our state institution and our land grant institution to be the place where we are building the next generation of leaders. And we can't do that when our students are coming out with $50,000 and $60,000 and $70,000 in debt from their undergrad years, right? Like I have that kind of debt, and I'll tell you that it's shaped my entire life. I've been out of college for 20 years, and I still don't see when I'll get out of it. So I'm here because I want to I want to change the way that we think about the University of Minnesota, and I want to change the leadership at the University of Minnesota. I've gone over my 5 minutes. So, I want to say thank you, and I want to say that I'm here because I just genuinely, in my heart, want to make this university better. I want to make it a place that serves all Minnesotans.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Turner, and I am presently in my last year as being president of the mighty Minnesota Nurses Association. We do know what it's like to actually go on strike and fight a hard contract fight. So in that respect, I mean, I'll just cut to the chase. I'm all on board when you guys are coming with your contract fight, and I'll be right there front and center, and hopefully I can even worm my way to the bargaining table. That would be really awesome. But anyway, so I would consider myself the outsider in the sense that as far as my relationship with the U, my family have received excellent medical care in the past year. When I was a kid, I was one of 8, and we came down to the School of Dentistry all day long to get free dental work done, you know. I did go here for like a year back when it was $12 a credit, but I will say that in all honesty, I was a cautionary tale of maybe an 18-year-old that should have started at a 2-year college first. Okay, so I don't have a gopher rug yet, but that's not to say I can't get one.
Mary, if we both get on the board, I'll get you a rug.
Thank you. I started my advocacy work at the age of 50 in 2010. And I found out that I could, no matter what my political views were at the time, that I could fight for my patients, my profession. And so I became an advocate, and I quickly rose through the ranks. I was a director and then chair of government affairs, where Representative Atkins helped do our first workplace violence bill in 2015. Thank you very much, because that was the start of the good work there. Grateful for that. But anyway, and then became president in 2016. In 2018, I also became the chair of the board, and still am, of ISRUN, which is a Somali-based community action organization. Just to give you an idea, we gave out $2 million worth of rental assistance that first year of the pandemic. We delivered over 200,000 pounds of food. I myself helped, package and deliver that. Anyway, I was fortunate to have my first interaction with Teamsters in this sense on Thursday. What an eye-opener. What an eye-opener. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, I'm sorry, but the Board of Regents needs to figure out what the heck that means. As you all know, the face of Minnesota is changing. We are a diverse population with many, many cultures. And having been somebody who has immersed myself in the Somali culture, I'm telling you that each and every culture is worth getting to know and worth, and joining together as one people of Minnesota. Equity, you got a serious issue with equity on this campus. Okay, I went to the Indian Services Department. They don't even have internet. The people can't even come back to work because that particular building doesn't have internet hooked up. What's wrong with that picture? And then when I went down to the kitchen, I've had 7 years of HR experience before I became a nurse, human resources, or it was called personnel back then. That was back when they were friendly to the employees, okay? I was so angry by the end of the day. The first thing I want to do as a regent is go park my little butt down in that HR department, figure out what the heck's going on, okay? Because they're not being inclusive, they're not being equal, and they are not, and above all, and you can find this in more and more workplaces, they are not asking the workers what they feel about safety. you know, they go on about all the safety issues around here, and I have heard maybe I think the mechanics had a safety committee that they have or whatever, but otherwise they don't ask any of you. Are any of you on any safety committee at all? Oh, a global safety committee? No. Who better? That's just like the nurses in the hospital and the hospital workers. Nobody asks the frontline workers. And I see a definite lack of that here. And a definite lack of respect. And they go on about they want to be there for the students. And yet they talk about building brand new hospitals and brand new buildings and tearing down housing and then putting up new housing that's more expensive. And I don't see any of this helping the students. The last thing I want to say is I have covered this whole state. I am not going to forget Crookston, Rochester, Morris. Am I missing some? Duluth. Not going to forget that. And I'm not going to forget that they got leaky roofs in Morris campus and they've got elevators that don't work because God dang it, you better fix those before you start talking about building a new building. Thank you.
So hopefully that gives you an idea of who we've got in the running here. I think that's better than what we have already. So I'm going to ask questions from each of the groups that's sort of co-hosting this, and then we'll open it up to the audience. But let me start off with some questions from the Teamsters. So I'm going to make this a two-part question just to make it go a little bit quicker. But first part of the question is, as a regent, will you commit to visiting with frontline Teamster workers on campus on a regular basis? The second part is, what will your role be during the university's contract negotiations with the unions? Maybe keep this to 1 2-minute response.
Want me to start again? Yep. All right. Will you commit to meeting with me?
Yeah.
All right, then I'm in. It's that simple. In my experience, the best answers come from the folks that are at the front lines doing the work, rather than the people that are sitting in the boardroom. So when we've had, so on the Dakota County Board, as a mayor, as a legislator, kind of like Mary, I always made a point, I know Robyn does the same thing in the city of West St. Paul and West St. Paul City Council, is to get out there for the ride-along, get out there and see folks doing what they do. It's amazing what you learn when you go out and kick tires and see stuff in person. What was the second part of the question, Jackson?
What's your role going to be during contract negotiations with the unions?
Same as so for 33 years, I've been on one board or another. You can listen to the tapes now. Once after negotiations are over, and Ed probably has, for that matter, because he represented some folks that negotiated with Dakota County. Listen to those tapes. I believe in performance, not promises. And what I'm saying by that is I stand up for folks that are doing the work. It's all about the best interest of the students, and a derivative of what's in it for the students or what's best for the students is having employees who are helping those students have success. And if employees are doing well, then the people we serve are doing well. That's been my message as a mayor, as a county commissioner, as a legislator, standing up for working families, because if you all are being treated well and you're doing a good job and you're being compensated appropriately, it helps us recruit, retain, keep our very best workers and keep doing great work. So if you get a chance, listen to those tapes and you'll see that I'm the one person that's been advocating consistently for 33 years on behalf of frontline workers. Robyn.
So will I commit to meeting with Teamsters? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And my phone number and my email and my contact information is widely available. I'm a city council person in West St. Paul also. And I work for the Minnesota AFL-CIO. So I see a lot of folks that I see in this room around in different spaces, and I'm always available. But also you have my personal cell phone number. It's on those sheets that I left in the front. So if you don't have one, grab it. My cell phone number is on there. You can call or text or email me anytime. I'm absolutely going to be available to folks. And labor is my love language. It's where I exist in the world. So I said, I founded a local labor college. And I teach union folks all the time. I also am the trainer at the Minnesota AFL-CIO. So when it comes to what my role will be in contract negotiations, I'd love to be at the table. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I will say that when I've been on the other side of contract negotiations in the past, I'm the strongest advocate for being fair with workers. So when our city manager came to us in West St. Paul and said, hey, we've got, here's what we're looking at for contract negotiations, I was like, can we please not use parental leave as a bargaining chip? Like, I just want that for our workers. That matters. It matters for the people. It only matters for the people it matters for, and then it really matters. Like, let's just be a great place for people to work. So I will serve that role, and I also will fight every single day to make sure that if there's an organizing committee, CU is at least neutral on it. And I will be the first person to jump on the picket line with you if you have to go on strike.
Not sure, but I think on Thursday I started meeting with y'all. So I was out there already. So it's a big place. It was cold as all get out. I hope to do it when it's just a little bit warmer, like 30 degrees instead of 20 below. But anyway, I will carry on as I started as of Thursday. I hear about a fancy lunchroom on the top of Northrop. Well, I'd rather come down to my friends that I now have down in the student cafeteria. If you'll have me, you never know, they might not let the Regents in, for all I know. But anyway, and here's one thing about the bargaining table, because I've heard in the past, I will not, and I hope you all follow suit, I will not recuse myself. Doesn't that mean like take yourself out of the vote? I will not recuse myself just because I'm a labor leader when we're in negotiations, because I understand that's what some regions have felt compelled to do in the past. Okay, because I don't have any kind of financial skin in the game, but I do have skin in the game as far as representing the people of Minnesota. It's what I've done since 2010. That's what I'm going to continue to do. And from what I'm seeing, you are not only the workers of the university, you are the people of Minnesota, the students, the teachers, the faculty, you're all the people. And that's what I do for a living. That's what I, not for a living, that's what I do as a hobby. Okay, this is my passion and my love. Y'all know that this is not a paid position. My daughter thinks I'm freaking crazy, but you know what I mean? I do this out of love, and I think I speak for the other two that they do also. And so you're darn right. And as far as wheedling my way to the bargaining table, y'all just said we're the top dogs if we get in. So, unless they can fire me, you never know.
Let me just point out her button, it says union thought.
I just tell you that this is kind of a amusing story. I had a nurse that was all mad at me because I had come down there before our 3-day strike and was given the horror stories of what happens to you if you cross the line. And then she wrote me an email saying she doesn't believe in going on strike, but I was such a union thug, I scared her off from crossing the line. I said to Molly, my fellow nurse, I said, at what point am I supposed to be offended by this? She got on Etsy and got me a
So I've got a couple of questions from the professors who are here, the faculty that we're going to ask. So the first one is, can you tell us your views of academic freedom for professors and faculty, and what you would do to protect it as a regent? Maybe Robyn, if you want to start this.
So academic freedom is the keystone for faculty. It is the thing that we all, that we live, it's the thing that we live by, right? It means that when you're in your classroom, it is your space to teach your students what you need to teach them. And I can say that at the University of Minnesota, while I was an adjunct, there were times when I felt like I had quite a bit of academic freedom, and then it closed down on me and things became a lot more prescriptive and a lot more sort of top down from our administration, and that was awful because I'll tell you, like as a professor, a lot of the work that you do is, you know, is about learning your teaching style and learning how you interact with students and learning how you are able to successfully bring students along in the work that you're doing. And when you have to like take someone else's work and turn it into your own, it doesn't work. It doesn't feel authentic. The students don't connect to it, and you don't do the work that you are tasked with doing. So as a regent, I mean, I think this is a complicated question because it involves so many faculty at the university. But I think as a regent, you set the tone for the university, right? If you have the opportunity to hire the president, to make decisions, to say like to departments, to send the message to departments that they have to let faculty have academic freedom and have the space to teach what they're doing. And this is why we hire faculty, right? Because we're experts in this, in our subject matter, and because we understand it and care deeply about it. So, yeah.
So I've been reading the Star Trib since I was 12 years old, so that was like 50 years ago. And I read recently about this issue about the Hamlin University is where this all comes out. Read every word of it. The other thing about me is when I was in personnel, and that was a department that cared about the worker, my boss told me the most valuable advice. There's 7 sides to a story. When I read about this story, nobody bothered to look to 7 sides of the story before they made that decision. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and they did not, I don't even know if they bothered to talk to the instructor to see where they were coming from. But I'm not into doing knee-jerk reactions. Now, 7 sides doesn't mean I take forever to make a decision, but I do have the good sense to look to see what all the facts are and see where they're coming from. And you know, I would imagine that all of the instructors that are here are top notch. And y'all got the good sense that God gave you, and I trust you that you know what you're doing. Okay? And that's what I can promise is because you're going to be you might be teachers, but you're also workers. Okay, remember? And I've been on the side of workers and fighting for workers since I was 17 years old. And I'm not about to start now. And so I would fight tooth and nail if another situation like this comes up. And God forbid that we should, because then they ended up doing a lot of apologizing and backpedaling and all this other garbage with that. So if that's what y'all are talking about, I'm on your side for you to just do the job the way you are meant to do. Thank you.
I like Mary's answer and Robyn's answer, so I'm going to say I agree with you. Well, let me be more detailed though, and that is, as a former legislator, I had an opportunity to vote on stuff like this. And where the legislature wanted to impose our level of politics. And at the time, it was Republicans that were in control. They had some ideas on what ought to be taught, what shouldn't be taught. And my perspective is you hire people, you vet them, you make sure you get good qualified people in your classrooms, and then you leave them all. That's my perspective on academic freedom. These are also college students that we're talking about. They should be challenged in their thinking. They should be given a balanced set of, I don't know about 7 sides, Mary, but certainly an opportunity to think about issues from all directions. And that, in essence, supports the concept of academic freedom. Next.
Well, so we have another question from the faculty, but I think it applies to everybody in the room. So the salaries of some 225 administrators at the university dwarf those of the individuals who do the primary work of teaching, research, service outreach. As these administrator salaries have skyrocketed, staffing supporting the U of M's basic missions has declined to almost nothing, undermining those missions. Are you aware of these trends of increasing administrator salaries? Do they concern you? And what do you see as remedies for the situation? Maybe start with Rob or Mary.
All right, this sounds too much like corporate healthcare. You know, we had to do 9 months of a fight just to get a decent wage that we hadn't gotten for over a decade. that sound familiar about what's going on here? You know, your 5% I hear was the first good raise or decent raise that you got since 1988 or something like that. So you've been fighting a lot longer than we have. And the reason why, you know, I ran into the CEO, the ex-CEO of HCMC not too long ago at a retiree DFL caucus. And he said to me, he goes, you know, back in my day, no CEO of a hospital made more than $500,000 a year. Now that may sound like a lot, but when you think of Hereford, whatever, he makes 4.3 million. Okay, so the same, sounds like the same thing's going on here with your higher ups, all the bosses lining their pockets. And then at the expense of you all, but like I told some of the workers on Thursday, without you, the food service, the housekeeping, the instructors and all that, the doors of the university close. Because unless the students are going to teach themselves, cook their own meals, make their own beds or whatever the heck, or clean their own bathrooms or whatever. And no offense to you guys back there, but you know darn well, if they're not here, then you can't be here. It's the same way in hospitals. If the nurse isn't there, the doors of the hospital close. Same as here. So I'm sorry, a little bit of the money that's going that way. I will not just rubber stamp huge raises for the bosses.
So I've already talked about my experience as an adjunct, but this is obviously a deeply personal issue to me. I was making, you know, poverty level wages when I worked at the University of Minnesota, and I know that a lot of the folks who keep the university going every single day are struggling with the same things. And I don't even have to tell you, I'm sure, about, you know, the fact that I would spend like 10% of my wages in parking just to go to the university and work every single day. It's an enormous, it's not just an enormous problem. I think it goes to, it sort of is indicative of a much bigger problem in our university system, right? It's the fact that tuition has skyrocketed, students are taking on more and more debt. It's the fact that much of the actual day-to-day work in the university is being done by people who get very low pay and also are not treated with dignity in their work, maybe don't have access to benefits and things like that. It's a huge problem, and it's deeply personal for me as well, because I have shared that experience. And I think we need to do a real overhaul of the budget and really look at where the bulk of the money is going, and have serious conversations about how we raise wages for the lowest workers. There's also, I just want to say, there's a real incentive for it right now, because as you all know, we're really struggling to have enough workers in places. So I heard from folks the other day at the candidate forum that we had at the Capitol that, you know, they've had to close some of the dining hall kitchens, and I don't have to tell you guys this, but like that they've had to close some of the dining hall kitchens because they don't have enough people to staff them. So I think in that way, I keep thinking that this is a real opportunity for us in labor to raise these wages and to make these better jobs. And as a region, I will 100% support it, and in fact, push hard for us to re-examine the way that we treat our lowest paid workers.
So I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, but I sure hope I get an opportunity to work with these two, because they're really great. We literally, if the three of us get on, we'd make up a fourth of the Board of Regents. And three members with similar thinking could make a hell of a difference. I'd make 3 points to you. Number one is there is no excuse for a president making 30 or 40 times the lowest paid worker in any organization. That's just wrong. I get that the president's going to make more, but it shouldn't be 30 or 40 times, 3,000% more than what somebody on the front line is making. That's wrong. It's undignified. It's inappropriate. It sends a bad message. Number two, and that is that's part of the reason there ought to be a designated labor seat on the Board of Regents. For 80 years, nearly 80 years, there was a designated spot until 2011 when it was taken away, and it ought to be restored. Having a designated labor seat gets this message into the boardroom all the time. Every time the conversation comes up, that person is there to represent that. And you got, between Robyn and Mary, either one would be fabulous in that role. And number 3 is the legislator response. So as a former legislator, as you might imagine, I got, I think it's 111 people on my phone who are current legislators. I got damn good relationships with folks in the legislature. The response you get from them when you talk about administrator salaries, it ain't good.
Yeah.
And they control the purse strings. And you wonder why the cutting or the amount of support from the legislature has been cut in half over the last 3 decades. It's because when you send a message that you're going to pay your administrators the kind of figures that you are. So what I'm hearing back from legislators, and I see some nodding here to my right, is we've got all these tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of past graduates from the University of Minnesota, many of whom would likely, as a passion, a labor of love, be willing to do it for something less than what the current salaries are. Can you not find somebody? I heard this. I give Senator Rarick credit for this suggestion. Can you not find somebody that's willing to do it for $300,000 or $400,000 rather than 1 or 1.2 or $1.5 million? There's got to be some good and qualified people that be willing to work at that rate. And the key to that then is that then sends a message to the legislature. It allows you to make your legislative requests more transparent, more likely to be acted upon in a favorable way, and that helps lift all ships. Keeps tuition down, it raises wages and benefits, and that is the sort of partnership that we need to be back in with our legislative delegation at the Capitol.
All right, we have a couple of questions from the undergraduate students who are present. And maybe just so we have time for audience questions, if you could maybe keep it a little bit quicker. So first question is, as a region, what will you do to support queer and LGBTQ plus students?
Sure, thank you. That's not a quick question, but I'll give it as quick of an answer as I appreciate the question. The first thing you got to do is understand that you don't always understand, and that is sit down, listen, learn, keep your mouth shut. And that's part of the reason I'm going to try to talk really fast because I prefer to take some questions starting from you folks. But I have a long history in the legislature as a commissioner of standing up for folks and as a lawyer for that matter, for folks who don't have a voice, for folks who don't have power. Just look at my record on any number of issues, BIPOC issues, indigenous folks of, I was there taking the tough vote on marriage that everybody thought was a tough vote. I didn't think that was a tough vote. It was a simple thing to do, but it's just the right thing to do. And when you let that be your guide, that makes it a much easier decision.
So I'll just start, I'm gonna keep it quick too, but I didn't say that my first job out of college for 5 years was canvassing for the Human Rights Campaign. And so I would literally go to people's doors and say, hey, my name is Robyn. I'm out here with the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBT civil rights group in the country. And we're out here to we were trying to prevent the federal marriage amendment at the time that would have limited marriage and not allowed us to make the changes that we did in our state and then eventually in our country. So for me, this issue is where I started, and it's incredibly personal to so many of the people that I love and care about. But I like to frame every question I like to start every question with a framework of who benefits and who decides. And as a regent, you have incredible power over things like the budget, and how things are allocated in the university, and also setting the tone for the university. So just like Joe, I would say that I would want to start by hearing what's going on at the university for LGBTQI students and staff and faculty members as well, and to learn what's going on in the community and how we can lift that and how we can lift the things that are happening and where we need to go further. And then make sure that we're making budget decisions that are not cutting out like services that are incredibly valuable and important and sometimes life affirming and life saving for people on campus.
So the other thing I do when I'm not president or chair of this or running for this is I'm an intensive care nurse at, and it was a COVID ICU nurse for 3 years at North Memorial Level 1 Trauma. And when someone comes into my room and I'm hooking them all up to the monitors, this is what I see. I see a green line is their heart rate, pink line is their blood pressure, a blue line is their respiration. To me, it's a human being that I take care of. And because of that, they are due my respect, my compassion, my care, and my service to them. And I carry that over into how I view when I'm not at work. And if the issues that or the concerns that you're raising right now, if it's anything like what I saw on Thursday, no, it's like join the club as far as unequal behavior or unequal treatment and not being heard and listened to. And this is unacceptable. And if we're talking, they go on about safety issues everywhere. And I'm sure you've got your safety issues. And in my world, everyone has to be involved in correcting that. So I only mentioned safety because that's a big topic. But just know that as a registered nurse, it is in my blood to care about you, no matter who you are, where you come from, what background, creed, color, religion, sexual orientation. It's a must. And that devotion I give to you.
We have one other question from the students. As a regent, would you support student worker organizing efforts? If yes, how would you support these efforts? So who did we start with?
Yeah, 100%. I will be the first one. If you invite me to an organizing committee meeting, I will be there. If you invite me to come and show up at an action or or whatever, like I would be honored to be invited. And yes, I think there would be a huge benefit to having students organize on campus.
Where's the first sign making party? Yeah, and you know you gotta bring brownies. Y'all know gotta learn how to cook if you don't. So no, are you kidding me? So remember, I'm the outsider. So I take it there's a whole workforce of student workers here at the U, correct? Well, then, just like in healthcare, I think every single person in healthcare needs to unionize, from the medical director on down to the janitor. And obviously, from what I'm learning here, every single worker in the university needs to organize. It's the only way we will fight against corporate healthcare and what it seems to be is corporate university, because I'm hearing it's the same way no matter where you go. Basically, union is the only fight against corporate America. So yeah, we all on the front lines got to unionize. It's a given.
I suppose I could say, hell yeah. And I'm driving, I'll pick you two up and we'll meet you wherever you're getting organized. Let's do it. What do you got, Jack?
So we have two last questions here before we open it up to the audience. So this is being co-hosted by a couple of environmental student groups. So they have a couple questions about that. So the first here is, which environmental issues are you planning on prioritizing as members of the Board of Regents? So maybe Mary, if you want to start.
I think Mary got picked on early on the last question. Now, of course, I got to figure out something to say. So two things, renewables and sustainability by the way, performance, not promises, is where I come from. Dakota County in this coming year will be the only county in Minnesota, and the only one I'm aware of in the country that will generate more electricity from renewables than we use. That's kind of a big deal. We are also making huge strides in moving closer to being net zero. I applaud, by the way, the university isn't terribly transparent about it, but they're working at it, and they deserve credit for moving in the right direction. But if if you're not transparent, you don't measure, then people don't know what's happening. So I suggest that probably the two things that I'd work on, and I'd make sure to be transparent about it.
So the University of Minnesota's Institute on the Environment is leading the charge on renewables and on getting to carbon neutral by 2050 on all campuses. And I actually just read a report that they just came out with their third climate action plan, and they have decreased net carbon emissions on campus across the University of Minnesota system by 51% since 2008, which is tremendous. But we have so much further to go, and we have the most incredible researchers at the University of Minnesota who can drive this change. And so investing in places like the Institute on the Environment on campus, and investing in researchers that are, and in students who are doing a lot of the work of those researchers to move toward carbon neutrality, and also move the university to being a leader in changing the trajectory of our climate issues would be incredible, and something that I would absolutely deeply support as a Regent.
So remember, I'm on a steep learning curve, really fast and furious here. But what I have heard about this issue is that all the good ideas that have been started have come originally from the students. Is that true or not? I think it is. Go ahead, take your credit. And so, I mean, it should be. You guys are the ones who are studying this, right? Anyway, so what I would need to do as a Regent is definitely, first of all, give you all credit for the contributions that you have done so far, and all of these statistics that we were able to rattle off. Kudos to the students and the researchers and the faculty that have come up with the ideas. All right. And then it is, don't sit up in our ivory tower at our board meeting and look at whatever, and I want to make this point, don't look at whatever material they send us, because they've already tried to scare us off saying it's going to be 10 hours of reading a month or something, getting ready for this. If I see anything on economic and all this stuff I'm supposed to read before my board meeting, I'm going to be hunting all you guys down who are involved in this. I want your context so I can get your perspective of what I'm reading before I go into that board meeting. That's the promise that I can make.
Okay, last question here before we open it up. So recently the university divested its endowment from fossil fuel companies. So the question is, will you help hold the university accountable and transparent to its promises to divest from fossil fuels? Maybe you start with Robyn.
Sure. As Mary just said, these changes have been driven by students, and the divestment from fossil fuels was absolutely driven by students from the inside. So I think you should give yourselves a round of applause for getting there. I really mean it. Like a lot of changes that happen, students on campus and have so much power, and I think that that's incredibly important to remember. And so yes, absolutely, I will hold the university responsible and accountable for its divestment from fossil fuels.
Just so I get the question right, they have been doing the right thing or they haven't been?
Depends on who you ask, but they have.
And that's the way it always is. Okay. All right. Yeah. See, this is where, when it comes to the budget and all this other kind of stuff, that it's going to be our responsibility, our fiduciary responsibility to look at these line items and things like that, and not keep this vow of silence. I'm already getting scared by the orientation that Jackson says we're going to get, and all the things they're going to tell us we can't do. And I'm sure one of them is going to be, we can't talk to you all. Well, throw that little book right out the window. But anyway, no, we're going to be responsible for these line items, and what you're going to have to look for, if this is the corporate university world, you're going to have to look for, if there is something that's looking amiss, who is going to benefit by it? Okay, you always got to look at the motives of why people do things. And this is something, I'm not saying they do it, but if they're not doing as well a job as they should, then why aren't they? And that would be my job and our job to figure out, why aren't they? Who is going to benefit on the side? I'm not saying they're nefarious, but you never know. But who's gonna benefit from a decision that just doesn't look quite right?
Yes.
Legislators are like that.
So those are the questions we have prepared ahead of time. So we have about 20 minutes now for audience questions. So I already see a lot of hands. So keep in mind that we're doing this hybrid. So we have some folks over Zoom. So the way we're going to work it is we'll start with in person. And then if you're on Zoom and you want to ask a question, you can just type it in the chat and Gus will maybe, or they, yeah. If you want to ask a question on Zoom, either put it in the chat or say you want to unmute and ask it yourself, but we'll start off with the in person. Also keep in mind that I think Joe and Mary can stick around for a little while afterwards. I know Robyn has to take off, but if you have like a comment or question for one of them specifically, you could just stick around and ask them after the thing's done. But so we'll just start off. So just raise your hand and I'll call on you. I saw Eric's hand first. So
yeah, it's follow to what we're talking about, or what you were just talking about, the environment. They have a pledge of zero waste by 2030, and I can tell you, I'm the Teamster rep for the sustainability committee, but I can tell you, somebody pulls trash every day. We ain't getting to zero waste by 2030. We need a massive public education. Everybody needs to change on campus. There needs to be way more resources put into this. And we're contributing to the trash burner. There's a racial equity there, and the Hennepin County has zero waste as a goal. They don't even have a date, but we're contributing a lot of waste to that. And I can tell you, just by my job, every day I can see what goes out. And if they need to put up, they just think, oh, we'll just declare this goal and it'll happen, and everybody down at the front line will do it, students, workers, and they have the resources already if we just tell them. So,
So-
it's kind of I know it's kind of a comment, but that's something I really want to all be aware of.
So for people on Zoom, we had a comment from Eric that basically the 2030 zero waste goal is unattainable right now, just because they're not talking to students, workers, stuff like that. Do any of you want to comment on that?
Very briefly. So Dakota County is leading the way on exactly what you're talking about, Eric. The three magic pieces for the formula: education, you've got to incentivize it, and you got to make it convenient. If you simply make it a goal, it's not going to happen. And then you got to measure it to make sure that those three things are working.
And I just want to say that I agree, and also that I think it's really powerful to hear from you saying, like, yeah, you declared this as a goal, but like we're not getting there. And I think the folks in this room have a lot of knowledge about what we could actually do to move toward that goal. So I think education is one thing, but it's not enough just to put it back on the people who need to make changes. We need to do a lot more. And I think you all have a lot of the answers about how we do that.
I just have a question for you. When they set this goal, did they come and ask you first? I think so. So, and then doing what I call the old genie thing. If we just say it, if we just say it, it just magically happens. That's what I heard you saying. With this, why we need all three of us on this, you know what I mean? Because we need to replicate what Mr. down there is doing in Dakota County. We need his expertise. We need all three of us. But I just wanted to clarify if they had come to you and asked.
Cool. Also on that point, I want to remind people, Teamsters actually put forward a bill last session that would have created a training fund to pay workers at the U to learn about composting and stuff. And the U actually came out in opposition to that. So that sort of tells you what their stance is. So Eric over in the corner here. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Councilmember Robyn, so I get to represent this area and education, especially thinking of Black History Month. I'm also a PhD student on leave at the U. There have been historic attacks on our department that haven't had the most, rigorous and diverse ways of learning, from Latinx studies to African American studies, indigenous studies, gender and women's, like all of those have seen just decreases in funding and support. And also, when you talk about workers' rights, many of those faculty who are brilliant and nation-leading, faculty members of color are overworked. They are not given the support that they need. And then that creates exploitative dynamics for their students. Be on the undergraduate side and graduate side and have to pick up course loads because we're not employing sufficient levels of faculty. So I would love to see from our Board of Regents also, or slate, a commitment to doing everything possible to advocate for expansion of resources to those faculty, to those departments. Thinking of Black History Month, the Black Student Union just had a phenomenal event on Thursday talking about the student takeover of Morris Hall that created the African American Studies Department at the U. So it's so important that we protect, especially under, the right-wing attack of using critical race theory. We're seeing an attack against, all these diverse ways of learning that has contributed to, the democracy of our society. So we'd love to hear your stance on how you're going to be supporting those departments and those faculty members and those students who want to see those, institutions be protected.
All right, so we had a from the city council member for this area, actually, about commitment to supporting faculty of color, students of color, and ethnic studies departments at the university. So I don't know if any of you want to comment.
I think I already mentioned that I saw just a little bit of this inequality the other day when I walked into the Indian Services area, and I saw that they did not have internet set up, that the wires that were doing it were stopped and just hung down from the ceiling, and the asbestos that's in there. And, so I got a I want you to know that I got a bird's eye view of that, was totally appalled, and can only see what I saw and deduce that I know that I hear what you're saying. I was outraged. I am ready to fight for you.
I just want to agree. I think Mary is exactly right. And I think over my experience at the University of Minnesota, I've watched as the university has cut budgets for a lot of, not for more than just the departments that you mentioned, for basically anyone who's teaching racial justice and social justice studies. And also, the university very violently shut down the general college in 2005, which was one of the pathways that a lot of folks used to get into the university, especially students of color, especially first generation college students, especially refugees and immigrants who didn't have other ways to get into the university, came in through the general college and were able to graduate with 4-year degrees from the university. And we've never made up for that in any way, right? Having been a student at the university and taught at the university, I can say that a lot of it is in the drive toward being a top 3 research institution, but we have got to find ways to compromise. This is our land grant institution. It should be where we're educating the next generation of leaders that we need in Minnesota. We cannot just destroy the departments where those people exist and then expect it to be fine. It's not fine.
On behalf of all, thank you for being here. First off, the message that you share, by the way, here's one way to judge an institution. And that is when the legislature hasn't stepped up, when the funding has been cut in half as a proportionate share from the legislature towards the university. Where did the university look to cut? It's very telling with the story that you just shared with us. And by the way, I've got a bus tour with our Black Student Union students on Tuesday afternoon. I'm going to send them out to see you. We're going out to, we've got this unity project that they've been working on, student-led project in Inver Grove Heights. Initially got voted down, and then they reached out to me and asked if I'd help them. Long story short, is we ended up turning that around, just the way we'd like to turn something around at the university, like you just talked about. But they just this great group of students trying to increase the reach of our park system, our trail system, so that it reaches underrepresented communities. And we're taking that to our great as part of Black History Month to make sure that that's successful. But it's very telling, your question, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
We've got a thing on Zoom, but I'll get you next, Eric. So we have a question on Zoom from a Teamster. Do you agree that the Regent scholarship should be extended to professional degrees and make them online for those who cannot attend in-campus classes, or sorry, Twin Cities campus classes?
Yeah, can you-
So do you agree with the Regent scholarship should be extended to professional degrees? Yes, but with more money. If you're gonna, I'm sorry, if you're gonna do it, you don't want to have it come at the expense of undergraduate students. If you're gonna do it, and if there was ever an opportunity to do it, it's right now. You got a $17.7 billion surplus at the state. Now's the time to make that ask, but to make sure that it's an expanded pie, not just taking the existing pie and splitting it up.
Yeah, I'll agree with that and say anything that we can do to improve scholarships and improve access for students is an absolute yes in my book. And what's the second part of the question? Sorry, I can't read it very.
I think it's make them online for those who can't.
Oh.
live in Twin Cities.
You know, I've actually taught online for years, and I think it's an incredibly powerful way to improve access for students who can't get to campus. And it's a way for people who have not just geographic barriers, but also like family commitments, work commitments, other reasons that they can't get to campus to be able to participate in classes. So yes.
Remember, when I went here, it was $12 a credit, and you didn't go into debt, okay? So, just wishing for the good old days. And then, I have to say, and I can say this as a COVID ICU nurse, the one good thing that came out of this pandemic was that as a society, we are now using all sorts of various ways to communicate and to learn and to meet. And just as FYI, students, if you want to organize, having Zoom now all across the campuses, a huge, wonderful tool to reach everyone. So yeah, we're never going back, or we shouldn't go back. We should use the technology that we started during the pandemic in all of our lives. No matter how much of a pain in the butt sometimes it is to run a board meeting hybrid, but I'm getting used to it.
All right, we got a question from Eric in the back here.
I think Robyn's gonna like this question especially. There's a few of us in the room today who are adjunct instructors at the U. There's a few of us on Zoom who are adjunct instructors at the U. Do you see it as problematic that such a large fraction, 44%, of the university's instructional faculty are non-tenure track faculty? Further, the unfairness of conditions under which non-tenure track faculty work seriously undermines not only their well-being, but also student learning. In concrete terms, what, if anything, would you do to address those issues?
So for people, you can clap for that. On Zoom, the question is, what are you going to do to protect adjunct faculty? And maybe just explain this. There's two types of faculty on campus. There's tenure faculty and non-tenure faculty, and tenure faculty have more protection. So Eric is asking about people who don't have tenure. So I'll start. Robyn, I think, is probably the best.
So I think this is an enormous problem, and I can't tell you how often I felt like it was this sort of shame in a way, like I didn't want my students to know that I wasn't tenure track because they expected me to be there full time and to give my full self to the work. And I did, but at my own personal expense a lot of the time. And in fact, I had students who came to me and said, I want to do what you do. And I said, no, you don't want to do what I do. And that is heartbreaking, right? Because that's exactly like, what a thing to have someone tell you that they want to do what you do because you've so inspired them. But I had to tell my students, like, this isn't a good way to live, and you should probably think about doing something else. It doesn't serve the students. At the end of the day, like, when I was working as an adjunct, I was teaching as many classes as I could get, and I was also working other jobs at the same time. So a lot of the work that I did was late at night. And, our adjuncts are incredibly dedicated. They need real pathways to real jobs, to full-time jobs. And one of the, I think, biggest, so I feel like I can get so in the weeds on this, and I'm going to try to wrap it up. But I'm going to say that one of the biggest things about being an adjunct is that you don't have any pathway and you get no credit for the work that you do. No one is keeping track of the work that you've done in any way that will help you to advance into a better position. You don't have access to the Regent scholarship, so you can't actually use your work at the university to become a full professor or to get a graduate degree that you don't already have. So expanding those opportunities, I think, would be at the minimum, like, those would go a long way. But I also think that we really need to examine not only how we're using contingent labor, but also what are real pathways to people becoming full-time professors at the university if that's the work that they're doing.
I probably have more questions than I do, but are you guys paid like a lump sum for like each class? Are you paid hourly, or do you get overtime and all this other kind of stuff? I have a question.
Well, so as an adjunct at the university, in the leadership minor, I was paid $3,500 per class. It went up to $4,000 per class after 5 years. No benefits. I did at one point become eligible for health insurance because I was more than 50%, but it would have cost more than my actual paycheck, so I wasn't actually able to access it.
So that's what I had heard. So if you figure it out, you're probably making $250 an hour or something like that. Something that I start, you know what I mean? By the time you put your time in and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, one concrete way would be to set dollar amounts to your time and giving you, have a frickin' employee contract with some basic labor laws that they got to follow with the rest of us. One of the overtime, and you all can do the dollar amount, but take 4,000 for how many hundreds of hours that you put into these classes, and then figure out what a decent dollar amount would it be, and do anything over 8 hours or anything. You know what I'm saying? Something basic like that. Let's get some concrete. This business of getting a one little lump sum, boy, are they getting up good on that?
Thank you for the question. One of the unions that I was part of was when I was an adjunct at Inver Hills Community College. And I had the option of joining or not. And quite honestly, most of my fellow adjuncts weren't joining the union, and I sure as hell was. I got family, I got people that mean a lot to me that fought for those rights, and I was certainly going to do my part. I think the key is to find a pathway, and to define what that pathway is to get into the position where you have some degree of certainty in that role. Robyn nailed it. You just got to give folks what is a reasonable pathway to be able to follow. I might add, during my experience both in college and law school, best professors I ever had were the adjuncts. No offense to the full-time, the tenured folks, had a lot of respect for them, but the adjuncts had their boots on the ground. They were the folks talking about frontline. These were people that were working all day, doing other things, and then they were taking the time to come in and teach us. And so they're the ones that I've kept a relationship with. My former students, having taught 7 years at Inver Hills, those are the students that I've got a relationship with that I've tried to help further their careers along as well. So great question, appreciate it.
I think we'll do 2 more questions. I am going to give priority to a Teamster member if they want to ask a question. So just raise your hand. Mick's going.
Yeah, it concerns the issue of insurance and benefits. So the University of Minnesota is self-insured, meaning it functions as its own insurance company, right? And as such, it makes money, actually quite a bit of money most years. That said, we constantly, and at some points greatly, we pay more for insurance with the passage of time, despite the fact it's profitable. What do you have to say about that?
So the question from Mick is, what do you have to say about insurance at the university and the fact that it's basically an in-house insurance agency and it makes money for itself, so.
I know you all got 5% raise and just watch, it'll be a 5% increase in your insurance, I'm sure, and your deductibles, et cetera.
4.6.
You know, many people would say, just like they say to nurses, don't you guys get your insurance free? You work in a hospital. Oh, hell no, we pay some of the highest rates. And that seems to be the case here for you. They're making money off the backs of you. That's wrong. And especially if you are going to healthcare within the university system. I'm not talking out of network, you know, I'm talking in the system. And we should be fighting for you to get free this, free that, you know, and much lower deductibles. Because they shouldn't be making those high profits off the people who, remember what I said? Without you, the doors close.
I'm just gonna agree and say there's no excuse for the university making more money off of the backs of workers.
I would add, yes. Nick, the more gray hair I get, the more concerned I get about healthcare and insurance. But what I would say is it's actually a good thing to be self-insured. You can cut out the middleman, but you gotta, this is why transparency, one of the themes that keeps coming back about the university and Board of Regents, let's open the books. Let's let folks know what's going on. They sure that shouldn't be making money on it. You should be taking what comes in premiums and putting it right back out in terms of care for the people that are insured through the university system. Without having to pay an insurer to do the administration, you should have the absolute best and most affordable insurance that's available. And the books ought to be able to be open and prove that. And if that's not the case, then we ought to fix it.
All right, last question in the back. Sorry, Jim.
What can we do to help you get elected?
All right, well, I'll talk about that too, but I'll let these folks respond.
Yeah, contact your legislators and ask them to vote for all of us. There are actually, so Joe and I are in the same district, but there are pathways that would put both of us in the regions. So ask them to support all three of us. Yeah, I agree.
Everybody said about it, and we catch a few more people. What we need most of all is a voter block. Okay, and so we do need all three. And then when we get in there, we'll figure out who else we can corral into our corner. But if we're going to get anything done, because I've heard in the past, you know, you get people that go in there and want to, you know, make changes, but there may be one person out of 12. And so it's huge that we get a voter block because it's voted on by the legislature, one of 2 states that does it this way. All of you have a part to play. You send your emails to all your senator and your representative. If you don't know who they are, I'm sure Jackson will tell you how to figure it out. And we need all the workers all across. I know that we're going to have 200 housekeepers, I think, that are going to help us out, right? They're all getting organized. And so, yes, you have concrete things you can do, but we, the 3 of us, have to get in. Okay, that's your assignment.
I don't need to add to that. That's
No,
great.
no.
Right.
All right, so like I said, Mary and Joe are gonna stick around, so if you want to ask some more questions, feel free, but I am gonna talk briefly about next steps for how we can support these folks, but before I do that, I think Brian wants to say something.
No, I do. I don't need the microphone. I'll yell if I have. We're union thugs. Yeah, we're union thugs. No, look, first of all, I want to thank Joe, Robyn, and Mary for coming out and taking the time to meet with the Teamsters today and some of our Teamster friends for the University of Minnesota. But I also want to take the time to make sure, let's thank them for standing up for workers and students and adjunct faculty and everybody at the University of Minnesota. these folks for a long time and they're great people. And it's about damn time that we put the effort, energy, and resources into making sure that we have a Board of Regents at the University of Minnesota that represents the population on its campuses. And that's what we're gonna do. I know Jackson's gonna talk a little bit about that, so I don't want to step on his toes, but I want to assure all of you that we are gonna put those resources, the time and the energy to make sure that our members, and not just those who work at the University of Minnesota, but the 11,000 Teamsters that we represent across the state of Minnesota are doing what they need to do to make sure that we've got a Board of Regents that we can count on and look after ourselves. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I'm going to talk briefly about the process here. So as has been mentioned, the legislature is the deciding body here and who gets on the Board of Regents. And while we have these three folks in the running, there's other people who are running against them who I can guarantee you are not anywhere near as good. So we really need to make sure that the legislators hear that these three are supported by students, workers, and faculty at the university, and that they absolutely, this isn't a choice. Like, these people need to get on the Board of Regents. So what Teamsters is going to be doing is every Teamster member in the next month is going to be getting an email and a written flyer telling them how they can contact their legislator to support these folks. So that's going to be the first step for us. The other piece that Teamsters can help out with is our lobby day, which is on March 15th. And Ed's going to speak to that briefly before we end. And that'll be an important way that you can come to the Capitol and actually tell your legislators firsthand that these people are good candidates and that they need to get on the board. One last piece I want to mention here is that this is a coalitional effort, right? So our recent contract negotiations, yeah, it was Teamsters who were threatening to strike, but we had a lot of friends in the university community, the students, the faculty, who had our backs. And it's the same way this time. It's not just Teamsters who are fighting to get these people on the Board of Regents. We're going to be working with students and faculty on this as well. So in addition to Teamsters contacting your legislators, we're going to be working with the students and the professors to figure out ways we can, go to the legislature, hand out leaflets, stuff like that, schedule meetings with senators and representatives. So I guess the two main takeaways are, one, stay tuned for updates from us on how you can contact your legislators. And number two is look forward to working with the students and the faculty on getting these folks through. And with that, I'll leave it to Ed for some closing thoughts here.
Okay, let me see if I can make this thing work right this time. Wow, what an exciting time for us, really, to be able to make a difference in this process. We started it through the RCAC, the Regent Advisory Council, and we're going to take this as far as we can, and we're going to start to make a difference in this Regent selection process. But let's hear it again for these three candidates right here that, I think at the beginning everybody was asking, well, let us make up our mind. Are these great candidates or what? There is no doubt about it. So our next steps, as Jackson just mentioned, is that we're going to be reaching out to our members. We're going to put together a flyer with a QR code that would allow members to directly contact their legislators, whether it's through a phone call or through an email. But we're going to be very, very aggressive at getting this out. Stewards are here today that work at the U of M. They're going to be reaching out and disseminating some of these flyers. But if you're a Teamster, we have our website up right here. We have Lobby Day on March 15th. Now, this is going to give us, as an organization, the opportunity to have face-to-face contact with legislators. And each of you will be visiting with your own legislator, whether it's your House rep or your senator. And it's important that we convey the position as to why we support the candidates that we do, how it's going to affect you and your job, how it's going to affect your family, how it's going to affect our communities, right? How it's going to affect students, faculty. We can put this together, and there's no doubt about it, if you're involved, it'll be a successful process. So again, Teamster Day, March 15th, we're really going to have a lot of fun doing this, and we're gonna have a big, loud, strong union voice at the Capitol on March 15th. So please be sure, as a Teamster, you sign up, encourage your coworkers to sign up. We need to be loud at the Capitol to make sure that this Regent process is going to benefit the people that it truly impacts. So with that, any other questions, any other comments or anything? Yes.
Paul from Teamster 120 called me this morning and said they're gonna help too.
Awesome, awesome. So joint council is gonna be on board, and which pretty much puts all of the Teamsters together. And I believe at last count, it's somewhere around 62,000 active members in the state of Minnesota. So,
Yeah.
so that's huge. That's huge. So we're on board. We're gonna do everything we can to change this process. And if we're able to get all three of these on board, and then we have legislation that's gonna change, that's gonna require a Regent labor candidate, we can have 4. We can have 4 pro-labor, pro-worker, pro-student, pro-faculty Regents that are going to make a difference. And what happens is we'll have all 4 of these, these 3 and the other one, changing those conversations with other Regents. And that's what it's all about. They will be carrying our water, talking our language about the impacts that we need. So let's give it up for these 3 candidates again, and thank you for coming.
Say really quickly that
Oh, one last thing.
I have to take off, but my contact information is on the back of that flyer, and I would welcome calls, emails, texts. from
Hey,
anyone.
can we get a group picture?